What's kicking, everybody? This is episode 92 of the Weekly Wave. If you haven't, please like and subscribe. Follow on Facebook. Make sure you go to YouTube for the full version of the show. My guest this week is Miss Megan Wren. She is a songwriter, producer, multi-format audio professional, music teacher, and just a rad person. So without further ado, Megan Wren.
Okay.
My friend, the songbird, Miss Megan Wren. What's kicking, player?
Hey, Matt. Thank you so much for having me today. Oh my gosh, if I could have half your joy. I love it.
Bullshit. You bring me all that joy. You fill my cup, sister.
Aww.
And also, we got caffeine. Trying to bring your Starbucks into my home. I don't need that quadruple caffeine
I
bullshit.
almost texted you, sorry to, suggest the corporate stuff.
I was sitting there with my fiance. She goes, you responded that quick. I was like, I want no part of it.
Absolutely not. I was like, usually I don't either, but they got that peppermint mocha right now. And
I got no problem with the corporate aspects, but something about the caffeine contents.
Really? You just need more?
No, I'm just like, okay, I'd rather drink a pot than one of these and get jazzed like that. Because my body's like, what's this amphetamine that you put in this happy little Starbucks?
Yeah, you're like, do not bring that over here. I was like, okay, I'm so sorry.
I really like Starbucks when I'm driving home on a morning and I really need that caffeine buzz to get in the car and get my mind right. Mm-hmm. But honestly, if I do it when I'm sitting at my desk, it's like, okay, I think I'm developing a heart murmur.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. You're gonna be awake.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But it's so nice to have you out here because this has been a great, what's 2 years of reconnecting now? Maybe a year and a half since Fountain Square?
Yeah, that was just this summer, wasn't it?
That was this summer? Okay, so this was in the last year.
Yeah, oh my gosh,
But it's so odd we grew up within a proximity of each other and kind of loosely knew each other through high school.
Yeah.
But then you come back and you find out that people are aligned with you on a path that's very peculiar, and it's hard to find friends that really feel resonant to what they want in this and where you're at with it. It's been such a gift to have you back in my life, my friend.
I agree, because you're one of the only people I know who have been in the area doing it from the same time. We were both really young starting out. And so I love seeing it, and we did the similar cover gigs in our own band and then releasing our original songs and all that, so I agree. I'm happy to have you back too.
Yeah. Well, what was it like so you were a high school kid when you decided to go to OU to study. What's your actual degree?
Yeah, communications is the broad degree.
Really?
But a specialization in audio production.
And did you know that from the get?
I thought for a little bit about psychology, which I think plays back into, I'm a songwriter now, and I think those interests that I had in psychology are the same ones that led me to songwriting eventually. But I wanted to be able to go into production so that I knew what I was doing on stage or in a studio. I knew how to play guitar, I had guitar teachers, I had a lot of vocal experience before going to school, different teachers and different programs that I did for vocal training. But I really needed that studio training, and I needed to be able to hold my own playing a live show and being like, where do I plug in this microphone, What do I need to tell whoever's running sound to get where I need to be? Basically, do I have that communication to talk to a producer or a sound person is what I wanted. I wanted to start releasing my own music too. So OU has a wonderful program in music production. It's in the Scripps College of Communication, and there's a media school, which is cool. They're doing a lot of VR and podcasting stuff there now, which is cool. My major was MPRI, Music Production Recording Industry. You split, so you either pick business or production, and you specialize kind of in one. So I chose production, but then I also took the business classes as well. So you learn the legal, and then you learn the studio stuff, and that was wonderful to have. Yeah,
that's super cool. I mean, I think what you said, the vernacular is the hardest thing about getting into this industry and feeling competent when you talk to people.
Big time.
But when it came to the business aspects of that, what was your freshman year like in that kind of class?
So I'm trying to think. We read a lot about different contracts or even sync licensing. We did one project that was take this movie scene and put your own audio to it and talk about the different choices you make. We studied Apple a little bit and their iPod commercials and all that kind of stuff. We had a bunch of sync licensors come in, read different books on production, even just contracts, I'm trying to think, royalties, learning how that stuff went down. I feel like it's a lot of stuff that you and I know now, but I just had a little bit of background knowledge, so when it does come up, when you're working with entertainment lawyers or venues, that kind of stuff, we even learned in class, pay-to-play stuff, do you really need that? We talked all about benefits to certain gigs where you're not getting paid well, but maybe you're doing it to be in a new audience, new venue, that kind of stuff. So we talked about all the business stuff that I think you learn from experience as a musician, but maybe we got a little bit of a knowledge into it quicker to do that.
Yeah, I always had the question of, when we're talking about academia, talking about the modern place of the music industry, it's like, it tends to be a little out of date.
Yeah.
Not by the nature of it, but when you come out with a degree, you either go into the field or you go back into academia, and there tends to be a skewing of what's actually going on in the world and what we're talking about over there. How much would you say they were on the nose versus they're 5 to 10 years behind?
Yeah, I think that OU is doing a really good job, at least when I was there, which has been a couple years now, of like being on top of things. One thing that I think was a big influence for me is they started something called the Music Industry Summit while I was there, that had a bunch of people come in from different areas of music industry professionals and talk about their roles. I think they had, who was it? It wasn't Stranger Things, but it was like a level up there. Somebody who was a sync licenser came in and talked there. They had Phineas, Billie Eilish's producer, come in and talk. They had Phoebe Bridgers come in and talk, that kind of stuff. So it was high-level people and all their different experiences. Those are just like my personal, like, I love them so much. So I was excited to see them. That kind of stuff. They had Bob Boylan from NPR Tiny Desk come in. I actually worked with him on a couple stuff. It was the year that Tank and the Bangas was the NPR Tiny Desk winner, and we ran sound for them. They came to OU.
That's sick.
So that kind of stuff, I think it was very good. At least what I took from my experience there was they really put all the different professional roles in front of us and said, okay, here's what you could do. Now go pursue it if you like it. I worked with Jim Eno of Spoon. I went to his Austin studio and worked with him for a week. Those kind of things. They have a couple master classes in New York now. So I think even though OU, we think of it as Athens, Ohio, being in the middle of kind of nowhere, you're on 32 and you just show up there and suddenly you're in this college town, I think it's really well connected, and I think they're good at bringing people in or making sure that you know where you can go. They also have a semester in LA program. I didn't do that one, but like a lot of my peers did, where you go and you intern in LA for a semester and you have kind of guidance in that way and different connections. So yeah, a lot of my peers are out in LA now, or they went to Nashville, Chicago, that kind of stuff. I stayed in Athens for a year until COVID hit to work for the School of Music. I was doing orchestral recording, which is my, I guess, specialty, or I did that for about 5 years, recording symphonies and that sort of thing. And that was the path that I was on until COVID. I really love live recording, live streaming, that kind of stuff. And now it's kind of morphed into podcast editing, but that's, I think, the way my career went is I love post-editing and cleaning things up and making a final product. And that's what I had experience with the School of Music. So, yeah.
Well, it's so cool that, if you're talking about kids going into the music industry, a lot of parents and a lot of kids themselves, I'd like to feel like you're going to tell me a job title, a salary, and a path. Some very clear and concise ideas of what's going on. When realistically, all of us tend to wear a lot of hats.
Big time.
This is not the kind of game where you find your one lane and stick to it. It's like if you're not diverse and open to that, you're not going to find where you're happiest. You know? Did you ever expect to love orchestral live recording?
Absolutely not. No, I wanted to learn how to make my own music. I learned how to, make sure I could record and produce, and how do I get on Spotify? We learned about stuff like BMI, ASCAP, all that kind of stuff. So like I said, I think you don't have to go to school for it. I think if you're someone who is hands-on and just gets into the industry, or is really go-getting, moves to Nashville, like just kind of dives in, even the way that we're doing it here, you dove into the music industry, you get to know the venues and the local people. I think hands-on experience is absolutely the most important thing. I learned the most working from hands-on, even at OU. So, yeah, can you repeat the question? I went side note there.
No, you're fine. I think it's just finding out how much, the academia kind of has that value in your life is a very interesting proposition for all of us, especially saying, like, what's the cost to value of this? But you sharing that it's about the in-person experience, the hands-on experience, like when you have someone like Phineas or Phoebe come through, you realize this is a game of people and relationships.
And
and sometimes the the quality of the staff at a school is what makes a difference, whether that program actually has merit or not.
Big time.
You look at our CCM lineup in town, it's like there's a lot of really well-known and super talented individuals, like a guy named Toby Donahue that works at CCM. It's one of my favorite producers in town. I know he does a lot of work with Bootsy and whatnot. Yeah. And, you know, that's still a local person, but it's enough affirmation in my mind to be like, you know, this is where I want to sit and push this kind of thing.
Yeah. It's kind of like opening up. I think of it in the same way as there are smaller versions, like if you take a master class or if you're part of a coaching program, like anything like that, where you're just getting mentorship. I think a lot of the music industry, maybe just industries in general, just getting work in general, especially in creative work, is like putting yourself out there and being present and soaking in as much as you can from other people. I think that's what my education was just further opportunity to do that. And yeah, I was like a shy, introverted 18-year-old, so I needed somebody to push me a little bit, right?
For sure. So what was that first time doing the orchestral thing like? Like what kind of a mic setup are you doing for something in that?
We were using AKG 414s was our main stereo pair. So usually what we're doing, if it's a smaller ensemble or maybe a solo performer and a pianist, right? We're doing a stereo pair and maybe a second stereo pair on the outsides, right? So ORTF, I'm doing it hopefully on the camera here, is a French stereo setup that basically mimics your ears, so it mimics headphones. It's basically like something like 17 centimeters apart and then at an angle that matches our ears. So we record in ORTF for our main stereo pair. There was also another stereo pair above that sometimes we use that was just in the recital hall, and then maybe a space stereo pair as well. So maybe up to 6 microphones, but maybe even just the stereo pair. Yeah. When you're recording for the School of Music, you're recording as accurately as you can because these musicians are using it for their audition pieces or submitting to grad school and that kind of stuff. So I'm trying to get the cleanest, most accurate recording. We don't go back and do overdubs or anything like that because it's got to be honest and all that. I'm taking out coughs, I'm taking out audience murmurs and whatever, that kind of stuff. So I think that's why I approach podcasting the same way now as I start with denoising, because that's just like the way I've always gone in. It's like, take out whatever's happening in the back.
Yeah, what's so fascinating in that realm of things, like the intention of the picture you're taking is very different from a pop record.
Yeah, totally.
You know, where the DI of the acoustic's probably going to be best, but I'm going to have this mic here because I want some of the plectrum sound, or I want some of these things.
You want the room.
And when you're taking all these stereo sets back, do you start with a hard pan, or do you kind of start to skew from mono and see how much you need to open to fill the space?
Honestly, you don't need too much. And again, we were limited just to like, we have to get these out pretty fast. It was probably like 100 concerts a semester because it's the whole School of Music, right?
Holy shit.
So we're moving along, right? So I think even with the stereo pair, we don't have to pan too much because it already is at that angle, right? I remember working with some of the brass professors because when you're in a smaller recital hall, brass is really difficult. I always was like, this tuba is going to kill me. You know? You got a room smaller than this one and you're trying to mic a tuba or like get a decent tuba recording. That was like, I was like, someday I'm really gonna get this tuba. But working with brass and doing like trombone recitals too, where you have just an arch of trombone players, it's like, how do I make this sound good in here? So the trombone professor and I would even work on, in fact, a couple of the brass professors and I would work on different setups in the hall. For example, using the overheads that were built in, and then I believe we ended up going with a space pair right kind of up on the stage, and then another spot mic in the very back of the hall. And what we do is we mix all that together to get that immediate direct sound mixed with the back of the hall. So we really, that was really precise. I remember having him come in a couple times and just be like, really give me his feedback too. So I think that helped me a lot as an engineer because I got direct feedback from the musicians too. Yeah. Which you don't always get in the live setting.
When, especially when these are acoustic players, like they don't have this, most of them don't have the dual interest that we might of, I want to learn how to record my EP. They're saying, I want this to sound the best it can, like when I sit here in this hall, and trying to show someone the space they were in post, tends to feel like a different room.
Oh, 100%. Especially too, we also did like, there's a bigger memorial hall that's at OU where we, I don't know if you know the Marching 110, it's OU's band. They're like out there dancing on the field and all that kind of stuff. You would love their energy, right? Very big energy, this whole band. Recording them was just like, we're gonna do our best, but like they get off the stage, they walk around the room, you know, you just kind of are prepped for that kind of stuff. And the biggest goal there was just archival, like, you know, we were doing video too, so we were doing live streams. That's what we continued to do through a lot of 2020 and that kind of stuff, is just recording as much as possible, doing live streams. Like, maybe the audience wasn't even there anymore when they, you know, had to be masked in space and all that. And that's eventually when I left, because it was an hourly job. Hours were gone when there were no more students anymore. But,
yeah. Well, I would love to hear you speak of, you know, the difference that bodies in a space makes. You know, a full room versus an empty room is such a different thing to try to finagle in post.
Of course, yeah. I mean, if you've got more people talking, that's the first step. If you've got people who are sick, if you've got flu season, ASMR, right? All that kind of stuff. That was like...
I'll just clip that 40 times.
Please. Yeah, coughs exactly like that. Just loop it. We sound a little sick. That kind of stuff. The shuffling of feet, the shuffling of, they've got programs, right? All that kind of stuff. So usually what I do, I set up my microphones right on the edge of the stage. So like the performer's a few feet back, which means I have enough space for the microphone, but I'm also, the pickup pattern of the microphone is not picking up the audience as much either. So it's, you know, cardioid mic, that means it's facing the front, like, just like here, how like, if I'm talking over here, you can't hear me to the side, right? Exactly like that. So that's basically, the audience is back here, I'm not picking them up as much. So
cardioid has a side rejection, and hypercardioid has
even smaller.
Okay. And how, I've always heard, like, say like a beta 58 versus an SM 58, you want to have your monitor offset into the side, whereas with a 58 you want to have it straight in front of you so you get all the back rejection. What's that really have to do with like the polarity of the microphone?
Sure. I'm actually not sure on that. I'm going to be honest with you.
It's fascinating stuff though when you're talking about, like, you know, you went from having a guitar be your instrument to having this be your instrument.
Right.
And it's...
So really it's just about pickup, like omni, meaning you're going all the way around. You have basically 360. Cardioid, like a heart, cardioid, right? You're going in a heart shape pattern. Super, maybe ultra. It's been a minute. It's been a minute since I've studied. But, but you know, you're just getting smaller and smaller, all that kind of stuff. So that's what I look at. Different microphones, like this one's obviously pretty small. You know, I just go off and it's, you know, you can't pick me up. That's something to think about even as a singer. And I think too, maybe that's a good example of something that you learn just from being a musician too. When you're performing, you know, how do I use the pickup of the microphone and all that to like present my song and all that. One thing that I liked learning about too, coming into the program as a vocalist too, was learning about how to set up microphones for singers and how you want their throat open. Like small considerations that you make in recording, you know, so if I was recording the song, this is probably too low for me, right? Because I want my chin up. Here I'm closing my chin, so I want to be standing up, open my stomach, and then have the mic probably here so that I'm opening my jaw and all that when I'm singing. So like those kind of just small touches, that's what I really like about recording.
Yeah, there's such considerate little pieces of the puzzle.
Yeah.
That, like, you wonder why Lemmy from Motorhead sings straight up in the air.
Right.
It's like, just to do that, you know, 150 nights a year.
Voice,
That guy had a different kind of power.
Yeah, that's what you'll see me at gigs, even with like, I gotta work on this with the kids too, but like, I always, whenever I'm setting up, like stand really straight, make sure that I'm not going to be going through the gig kind of hunch, like, you know, not even just for posture, just for opening up when I'm doing my higher notes, making sure that my jaw opens and all that kind of stuff. So that's how I set up to start.
Explain that a little bit more. Is that like the soft palate reaction to heavier notes? Or?
I just don't, like, to get to higher notes, you don't want tension. So you don't want tension in your neck, you don't want tension in your mouth, anything like that. So I want the mic to be higher so that I will open here and I will relax here. And so that's just a special thing. Like if I'm cramped up like this, I'm not going to hit high notes as much. I feel like when we're belting, at least beginner singers or maybe people who just haven't belted before or anything like that, they'll be like, here comes the high note, and your body gets it, you're like, here comes that, am I gonna hit it? I don't know. And there's all this like tension or fear in your body kind of naturally, even just from like, here's the build up, you know, the audience can hear it in the song, you're gonna get to the high note, and like make sure you don't have tension in your body because you want your tongue to relax. I think that's like a really funny thing about singing. You actually want to bring your tongue kind of forward, just really open up your space, because then it's going to be way easier to hit those notes than like you got tension anywhere. Well, if you're squeezing your face really tight, it's gonna hurt, you know? You're gonna cause vocal damage.
It's crazy how much those little things do make a difference. Like, I was a kid that didn't have any vocal training, and I found out the first time I screamed in a bar that people like when you go there. So then for the next 5 years of my life, I tried to learn how to do that, and it turned out I was causing all this inflammation. I was losing parts of my range.
Yeah, it's scary.
It is. It's a really odd thing to say. It's like if they started taking frets off your guitar, you know? Like, you're going to lose these things that you've worked really hard to get to know by the time you're 50-something.
Yeah, it's special, too, you know? Even just stuff like making sure you're drinking enough water the day of a gig, that kind of stuff. I've had plenty of experience of, like, losing my voice and, like, being like, is it going to come back? Like, do I have vocal notes scare me? I had, like, one teacher one time show a video of what vocal notes look like a doctor's video. I was like, no, thank you.
Yeah, that's like the scare straight STD show when you're in the 7th grade.
I was like, I think that the vocal notes scare me more. I was like, oh my god. I was like, don't do that. I was like, don't take that out now.
Yeah.
That's funny. You go into the health stuff knowing it's going to be creepy, but when she's like, hey, look at what you can do if you sing too hard.
Yeah. and you never considered those things, but it's good to have a little fear of those things and start to question what you need to do outside of the music to get there. Like, how much has yoga helped you connect to those aspects of...
Yoga so much is breathing too, like having control over your breath, having control over your body. I practice every day. I think that it's changed my life in numerous ways. I'm sure it has for you too, but like having breath control, you know. There's something that I did in a recent gig. Actually, I invited the audience to do alternate nostril breathing with me. Have you done that before?
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's a song about breathing. It's a song about feeling tense and anxiety and some PTSD and not being able to breathe anymore. It's a really intense song. It's called Breathe. And so I coached the audience through alternate nostril breathing to start, which was really goofy.
Would you do that right now for us?
Of course I would.
Cool.
Let's alternate nostril breathing.
Yeah, let's proud of you.
I'm no yoga teacher, but I know enough to do it. So we're going to take our thumb, whichever finger. I know Yoga with Adrian will do the hang loose, but for whatever reason I like my first two. Okay. So I'm going to cover the thumb. And then we're going to breathe in through our left nostril for 4 counts. Go for it. We're going to switch nostrils but hold the breath for 4. And you're going to breathe out through your right for 4. You cycle through that, you come back through 4, switch and all that. I already did way more calm. I need some water.
Yeah. It's crazy though that I think the hold has been the hardest part for me to internalize because we have a little bit of fear when there's not the cycle of breath.
Yeah, you're concentrating on it and you're never usually concentrating on it.
And then also reaching the bottom of your exhale is something that I didn't feel in the same way that I do in my practice until I was called to do so.
Yeah.
And you don't realize that in the same way that like the energy you have in a day, like to fill up to 100% and then to empty to 0 is something that our body does crave. In the bottom of the exhale, you know, really, they can say it's cleansing of the bad energy, but just in a literal way, just recycle the breath, give yourself a fresh intake of this is so good for the mind and the heart.
It is. I think that breathing too, like I used to struggle so much with anxiety before shows. Literally shakiness, you know, and I had no reason to feel that. I knew I was a good performer, I knew I'd practice a bunch, but like the stage fright, the anxiety, the insecurity, like was so much at times, and now I have none of that. I think a lot of it is just from growing up and getting older and getting more confident in myself, but also just like knowing how to center. You know, it's more than me on a stage. It's way more about songwriting now. And when I approach a microphone, I'm thinking about the song itself and the moment I'm trying to have, rather than, oh my god, I'm so nervous, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, right? Yeah. It's none of that anymore. It's way more, let me have this moment. And breathing comes into that a whole lot, you know? Taking that breath, knowing, even just being able to, you know, go back to singing, like being able to hit certain notes. You have to prep, you have to go from your gut. You know, I had a teacher, choir teacher, who was like, when you're breathing, I better not see those shoulders move. You're not breathing from up. And you're not doing that. You're breathing from your diaphragm. Another thing that I like that she used to do, this is Linda Gartner, she's local. She would have us do, for breathing, hissing exercises and see how many counts you could hiss for. So it'd be like, okay, we're going to intake for 4, and then you're going to for like 24, right? And as a kid, I was like, oh my god, I don't think I can ever go that long. You know, you're going till you have the very last bit of breath. But she was teaching us breath control. She was teaching us to slow down, and I'll always be grateful for that.
It's really powerful the way that these don't just affect your singing, they affect your daily life. But in moments where you do your hiss, it's the hardest part is the repeat. You know, I can get through the first cycle of my breath, but then by 4, am I panicked? You know, have I overexerted myself? And learning those things about yourself is crucial.
Big time.
And I would love to hear you speak more about the aspects of stage fright that you've healed by going farther into it, you know, by questioning the what and the why in that.
Yeah, I think it's a number of things. Like I said, getting older and just having more experience is going to be a big one. I think being on stage as often as I have is a big one too. You know, you and I have been doing this for 10 years? Are we old now?
Probably about.
Yeah.
It's weird.
We're old now.
Yeah. Don't say that, please. I don't need that.
We're not old now. I tell all my kids, I'm like, don't even let anyone tell you I'm that much older than you. With the students. But
the quarter-life crisis is real.
It is a little real, but that's okay. But yeah. Y'all good? Oh, you're going for the coffee. Let's go. Yeah, so getting over that stage fright, getting over that anxiety. I think it has been a combo, like I said, of getting older, but also just becoming more aware of myself, healing mental health stuff. You know, I've been to a lot of therapists over the years who, at first, the first time I really went to see a therapist, I was like, I feel really uncomfortable just walking around in public because I feel uncomfortable just in myself. Like, I remember being on campus at OU and being like, okay, no one's looking at me. No one's looking at me. Like, that's where I was at. And it's crazy to think about now because I have none of that. And so I think maybe that just had to do a lot with being just like an insecure, awkward teenager at times. I try and coach. I have a lot of students now who are kind of in that same place in life, and I work on confidence with them. I work on, what are we going to do if we mess up? What are we going to do? Like, you know, if you do feel fearful or anything like that. I have one very beautiful student who must have some experience with deep breathing beforehand, actually, because we got up for her first performance ever and she was very nervous, right? And I say, okay, like, what are we going to do? And she goes, and I was like, oh my gosh, you good?
Yeah.
She was like, yeah, I'm ready to go. And I was like, sweet. So I like working with the kids on that. I think just knowing that I've practiced and that I am a good performer and that I am a good singer and that I do have something I want to share. And being, like I said, more purposeful than that, saying this song is actually really important. And the moment I'm about to have with this audience is really important. And that has eradicated all fears of more of, I have really something that I want to share here in a beautiful moment that I'm about to have. There's no fear when it comes to that. It's more of like, I'm ready for this, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I admit something horrible to you?
Please.
For the second time, I've messed up the audio of our interview.
No.
I just started recording this again. So I'll pull the beginning of this from the camera audio.
We can do it.
What a pain in the ass, right? Gosh.
Messing up the audio on a podcast. Who does that?
Who does that?
I've never worked with anyone.
The kind of person that's going to call you about, like, hey, would you mind editing this one? Like, it's kind of falling apart.
Hey, I only have the Zoom audio, and it was me and my cat walks across the screen at one point. My dog is shuffling in the background.
Well, to get a clean cleanse, and also just so I can share it with people, would you walk us through the pranayama one more time?
Absolutely, cool. Absolutely. So we're doing alternate nostril breathing. I am no yoga teacher. I feel like Matt could even be almost a yoga teacher by this point. What do you feel about that?
At some point, I'd like to get teacher training. I'd like to experience that, but I don't impersonate at this stage in my life. There's better information available.
I agree. So if you want more of this, Yoga with Adrian has a great one, alternate nostril breathing. But for now, we're going to take our thumb, we're going to cover our right nostril, and we're going to breathe in through our left nostril for 4 counts. So here we go. You're going to hold, and you're going to switch nostrils. You're going to breathe, actually, you're going to hold for 4. You're going to breathe out through that right nostril for 4.
And then let's repeat. Let's go in through the right nostril for 4. Switch and hold for 4. And breathe out through the left for 4. Beautiful. And I would do that for a couple minutes. I would cycle. I would go even like deeper into the breath, maybe even do longer counts or anything like that. But both times we've done it now, I feel instantly a little bit better, like a little bit more relaxed.
I feel like much less of a dumbass for messing up the audio again. I
I'm
felt so bad.
only gonna give you shit for that.
After the Muse, it's like I tried to set it up on that wireless and I didn't even record the right microphone. It's like, there's so many times in the trajectory of a young artist or a content creator where something happens in the moment that's irreparable, and you need to decide, do I scrap this or do I make something of it?
Yeah.
And I'm more under the impression every day that you should make something of it and admit where you fall short in things.
That's how you get better.
Yeah.
That's how you know for next time. That was, doing live recording, that was maybe the fun of it and the stress of it at the same time, was like, you better have a backup in a lot of ways. In that case, because it was my job, somebody's going to pay me for this and somebody's going to be very unhappy if I don't have it or have some kind of backup, that kind of stuff. But yeah, you're like, on the fly, and that's fun too. And it makes you learn.
Yeah.
Be better for next time.
And those moments where you need to tell someone bad news is really difficult.
Yeah. Clearly I was just distraught.
Well, I had a situation, I'm working on EP with our friend Tommy Lee.
Yes.
And I was preparing for our session yesterday on Monday night. And I'm like, I need to track bass on this. I need to do whatever. I open up the session and I have 15 blank audio files. Blank. Just record and nothing. And I was like, So how do I get out of the country? Because Tommy's going to fucking kill me. It's over.
How do I leave now?
Yeah. And then you have
It does happen.
You have to close the session, ground yourself for a moment. It's really hard not to spiral in those kind of moments, especially if it's your own performance or if it's a situation that you really care about this material. But backtracking and saying okay, what can I do? I can go back to previous versions of the session. I can reevaluate what my new starting point is.
Yep.
And once I went through the location of certain audio files, this was because I tried to reorganize my sessions and I moved files from different folders. Exactly. And the computer didn't know how to locate those things.
There you go.
So they were there once I found them.
Yeah.
But it's almost like if you messed up your save process, if you didn't have a clean template, don't try to fix it till you are done.
I've had some stuff with podcast editing where some of the newer clients, it's the same thing. It's a process. You learn. They're recording from Zoom, but they're also maybe doing a backup on their computer or something like that. And maybe we've gotten chunks where they're brand new to recording. They accidentally hit a button. I only have the first 5 minutes of somebody's audio, right? And maybe we've had glitches too, maybe something in the cable was a little wonky or something in their setup was a little wonky. And sometimes there's some magic that I can pull. And I think that's part of the fun of being a producer too. Recently there's a podcast where a guest was going to come on and it was her 3rd time on the podcast. They were doing a series, right? And the beginning of the guest audio didn't record. So I didn't get the review of okay, recap what we've talked about in the last couple episodes. So I said, I'm going to go back to the last couple episodes. I'm going to pull little clips and I'm going to make it seem like she responded and gave us a recap. And it's really just the original audio one more time. No one's going to pick up on that.
Yeah.
But it feels really fun when you're I found the solution,
Yeah. Well, it's nice to calm someone's nerves and say there are workarounds to this. There's always an alternate approach to this because it is art. It's human in that, and in our need for perfection it's a desire. It's not really a need. It's something that you kind of need to check at the door and say, if you don't have exactly what you expected, now is the time to reevaluate what you want at the end of this and how you start to get there.
Yeah, I think for me too, something I was thinking on the way over here too is I'm just so much more clearer on my personal career goals. And I think that knowing where you're going, knowing what the real desired outcome is so much more important than the perfection of it. For this, I want to catch up with my friend. I want to talk a little bit about what's been going on the last couple of years, what's going to be happening soon, kind of give people an update on that. And whatever audio comes out of this, I don't care. Like, it's like, if it's the phone audio, if it's we got on live and we talked, if it's like we get these really nice recordings, like whatever it is, that's not the end goal. It's not, oh, I want to make a very pristine recording today. It's not that. It's, you know, same thing too with performances. Like, maybe I have a really intense emotional performance and I miss a note, but somebody's still crying because they felt it, right? So the goal there wasn't to have a exactly perfect vocal performance. Would it be awesome if I did? Sure. But that's not the goal. The goal is to share this song and share this moment, and that still happened. So I try not to beat myself up about anything like that.
Yeah, and how would you relate that to the pursuit of your album, Sympathetic Vibrations? What was it like to step in there with a sloth of material and say, I think I know what I want these songs to be?
Yeah, so that was my first ever recording of my own stuff. And the background until that point in my life had been primarily cover gigs, but I just started writing my own material, and at that time I was pursuing my degree in audio. So I was like, I just want to see what it's like if I put myself out there, you know, and just see what the process is like. Thankfully, the person that I was working with, Eddie Ashworth, my producer, was also a professor at OU. He wasn't currently my professor because that would have been conflict of interest, right? But in a semester that I didn't have him, we worked together. And thankfully, him having that kind of teaching approach. And at the time, I had already established myself as being a talented performer and being someone who was like, this is an exciting project. So I had a number of musicians who were great studio musicians who could come in and also really want to give their effort. So I came at a place where I was like, I have amazing people to work with. Let me put myself out there and just see what happens. And that was the goal, was just to put something out and see what the response was. And it's been beautiful. It's been 4 years. People are still streaming that. I'm like, cool, I don't listen to it anymore, but thank you for that. Yeah. Now, the cool thing with you at the Monday's Muse the last couple of times has been revisiting some of those songs in like a new light. Someone New is my favorite, that bluesy one. And having you on that is fun. And I love that. And I think now I've been writing again, and my hope is for it to be a new project year. I kind of know the direction that I want to go. I don't just have dates set, so that's why I'm like kind of vague around that. It'll happen when it happens, and I don't rush anything. But I'm feeling really good about new music, putting a new band together, and that kind of being the way forward. So while that was the tester, and then I went through kind of really trying to understand myself as a professional the last couple of years, really I feel like I put myself out there, learned a bunch, and now I'm coming at it in a new way of I have all this experience. Now I can be the professional that I want to be. So yeah, that's what I say this year is now just like, let me keep it going. Cool.
Yeah. Well, I think it's the way that you mentioned, you know, stepping back into material is not only reminiscent, but an album's like building a house. Like, you decide what it's like when you walk in the front door. What's that first 30 seconds of this thing going to be like? Yeah. And then all these songs are rooms that, you know, on the studio recording, you can let people into. You can bring in these studio musicians. But then your live set, you let people into that space, you know. And I'm grateful that I have a variety of players in my life that do the touring and do the gigging with me. So it's great to step into this room with this group of people and see that the decor on the walls is fucking different. You know, the bed you sleep in, the things you feel about it are so much, there's so much inflected by the chemistry in that space.
Yeah, that's what's cool too about, and you do the same thing where you have a solo, you have a duo, you have like a trio, you have like a full band. You can go different ways with it, and every single time, or you can play with other people, right? Every single time it's like, ooh, there's a different flavor to it, right? Yeah. And I love that too. I loved playing through that with you. I've loved, now that the songs are older, just revisiting them from a different light. I've loved that. What I think is cool about the EP is it's still not one genre, and I can do really whatever going into this next thing. You know, I've been primarily solo acoustic, but the EP has blues, the EP has Americana, the EP has some rock and roll, like there's some weird electronic stuff on there, like there's mandolin on there, like it's so different song to song that I feel like I have kind of this open window to do whatever on the next thing, which is fun.
Well, I think in the world that we live in now, there's a reality that as well as you might sequence your EP, as well as you might put things together in the specific genre that you feel is fit, people are going to do with that material what they will. They're going to pull that onto their playlist, and you're going to be in their sequencing.
Yeah.
So there's less of a call to be congruent throughout the whole thing. Like, yes, your mixing, your master should be at similar levels, and there should be somewhat of a vibe to this. But saying I'm only a country artist or I'm only a solo acoustic singer-songwriter, you're shooting yourself in the foot creatively. Now, I would love to hear you speak to what it's like when a song falls at your head that's in a category that you never knew that you would write.
Sure. Something that comes to mind right away is I have this new song called Black Hollow. And my experience with songwriting has always been there's some other force involved. It's not just me. I'll sit down and write. You know, I write every day, but I do like stream of consciousness journaling instead of like, I'm going to sit down and write a song today. And I think that's a beautiful thing too, if that can be your practice. But a lot of times I'm just visited by things. We call it the muse.
Yeah.
But yeah, like it comes when you're in the shower, when you're doing dishes, when you're driving, when you're doing anything but songwriting, right? Yeah. Black Hollow has this line that goes, if the devil wants to take me, I'd love to see him try. That line is like the favorite of people when I play it. It's very sassy. It's very like, yeah, try me, right? I don't know where it came from. I remember writing it and not being conscious that I wrote it until the whole line was out. Like I was typing it and I was like, who said that? Who was that?
Yeah. Mama mia,
okay, that's new. You know, and now it's so fun and now I love playing it. I'm like, yeah, like that did come from me, but like at the same time, I don't know what happens with that. Just kind of comes from wherever. So yeah, I'm really visited by different forces, I think, and yeah, that's exactly where I'm going. It's just like, I think, can you repeat the question exactly, because it just brought me to the Black Hollow line.
What's it like when you write in a genre that you didn't expect from yourself?
Yeah, so I guess that is what I did not expect from myself, was that lyric. But I think that I don't have a genre that I really put myself into, because I listen to so much across the board, and I can do the acoustic. I want the electric to come out a bit more this year, because I've been playing it a whole lot. So like, I love Black Sabbath, I love Larkin Poe, I love Bishop Briggs, and then I also love Jade Bird, and I love Jason Isbell, and like all that kind of stuff. So like, songwriting I think is what I like the most. I love clever lyrics. I don't care what it sounds like from there. There, I love heavy metal rock stuff. So like, maybe we'll do more electric lead based stuff. That's what I hope.
Now, Larkin Poe, you mentioned them. Like that's not a group that I've listened to a ton, but I'm a huge fan of Tyler Bryant and the Shakedown.
Yeah, cool.
And it's like, you look at this epic guitar couple, and your mind just gets fucking exploded by and you realize
I love
that
Tyler Bryant too. That's awesome.
Yeah, what a great player and a great songwriter, and you realize that what's magic about Nashville, or magic about LA, or magic about Cincinnati, is that with each other we can get closer to that muse that you're talking about. When you feel visited or awakened by some kind of inspiration, sometimes you need great sounding walls for these things, and whether that's your partner or your friend or your bandmates or strangers too. Like, sometimes someone will come up and tell me what a song is about that I've been wondering this whole time. Right. And they give light to something that I could not. Exactly. Yeah. And isn't it crazy that once it's out of you, once the muse has come and your mouth has projected this thing, there's a really odd separation that you get from the song. It is not of yourself.
Yeah. And I think that's too why it's easier to perform. I'm just like, this was channeled through me. I'm so happy it's here. There's a book called Show Your Work. It's by Austin Kleon. Really easy read. It's like flip through kind of thing. But there's one section of it where he's talking about community. And I forget the artist he used. It was something like Picasso, Michelangelo, one of those guys, where he was like, he was part of a community that was regularly making art. So that's why he was inspired. He had that drive. He had that, continual thing. It might have been a scientist too. It was one of those like highly achieving creative people. And he said, like he had this community that was regularly meeting, regularly engaging with each other's work. And that's when you get better. And I think that's true.
Yeah, especially when you talk about something like Crooner or the Muse, where here's a couple of weeks back to back where we get to step up with these tunes, and you're like, well, maybe I wasn't satisfied with the way that the bridge came out last time, so I'm going to make a left turn. Or at least you have people that have been there in the room with you to reflect on those things. Like, that's why I'm most grateful for my bandmates, to spend 3 days in a car together playing these songs over and over again. then you listen back and someone can say, this, not that, this for this. You know, you can start to extrapolate the individual pieces of this. There's so much truth in the detail of that.
Yeah. You know that quote that's like, what you focus on grows, or what you focus on you attract, that kind of thing. It's a law of attraction-ish, but it's basically like, if I wanted to be a big songwriter this year, and I put all of my energy and all of my focus into songwriting, then the songwriting opportunities would just come. They would be even more because I put my energy into that. So it's basically like, what you put your energy into, you attract. So when you're focused on other songwriters, when you're spending dedicated nights a week listening to local songwriters, listening to your peers, then you'll grow. That's a natural thing. You're putting your energy into it, so it'll expand. You'll find more opportunity. You'll find advancement, all that kind of stuff. I really believe that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think you can really attest to that when you talk about your students and what it's like to feel fulfilled by a beginner's interest and those first couple aha moments of what and why. How long have you been teaching?
Yeah. So I started teaching 5 or 6 years ago, but I only had one student. It was a friend of a friend. He was a neighbor, and his parents really wanted him to learn guitar, and they wanted private home lessons. And just through talking with some friends, they found me and they called and they were like, will you come teach him? And I was like, well, I've never taught before. Let's try it, right? Let's just see what happens. And I think I was like, just give me $5. Like, you're around the corner. I'll walk over. We'll see what happens. I'll hang out with him for a half hour. He was like 8 or 9 at the time, my student Darsh. And I've been with him. He's still playing, you know. We've been together 5 or 6 years now. And then over 2020, in the pandemic, I was really trying to figure out what can I do that's still music related, but this was when everything was shut down. And I was like, I can teach guitar in somebody's backyard. We can be however many feet apart. I can still see them, I can still teach them. So like I put out a poster on like Facebook and Instagram and all that, was like, hey, I'm a guitar teacher. Like, it was like stuff like Darsh and I had played at Walker Brothers Ice Cream in Montgomery a few times. I was like, my students play, here's some songs, here's what he's learned, that kind of stuff. And Third Rock Music Center saw that and they said, we want a guitar teacher. Do you want to come down here? And I was like, absolutely yes. And now we're at 25 students. It's been a year and a half there.
Wow.
I love them all so much. I didn't think that I would go into teaching. I didn't really think that like I can keep kids entertained and I can teach them how to play and like all that kind of stuff. I have a music minor, but people who are guitar teachers, I always was like, they have their masters in music. Like they really know what they're doing. And that is true for a lot of teachers. And that's something I'm kind of teaching myself, the more advanced stuff now behind the scenes, because I'm like, I do want to offer that. But yeah, I just got started and it's been growing ever since. And the kids, like you said, the beginner's mind is amazing to see. It's really precious, and I have kids who are playing we're doing a lot of Metallica right now, so I'm kind of excited about that. We're doing Nothing Else Matters. We're doing Enter Sandman, that kind of stuff. What else? And then some of the kids are just like starting on chords. I have one sweet girl, Grace, who she played in E minor and she goes, that was so powerful. And I was like, it was
straight up.
I was like, hell yeah, it was. Like, that's cool. She's like 8. She's like, oh my God. And I was like, I know, right?
Yeah.
And just kind of seeing that joy come back, or like when they play a power chord and it doesn't buzz for the first time, they like have the touch right. And I'm like, you got this, like, right? Some of the kids like to write songs too, which range from very entertaining to very, very entertaining.
Yeah.
One kid, we spent like a half hour. He's like, I really want to write my own song today. I'm like, okay, what do you want to write about? He's like, batteries. I'm like, all right, are you sure? He's like, yeah, I really want to write about these batteries. And I was like, you know what? Creativity, I'm about it. Let's do it. So we spent half an hour. I was like, okay, like, what can we rhyme with batteries? He's like, we can see. And I was like, okay, sure. Just like giving them whatever, because that's what it's about. And I've talked to a lot of the parents about this, especially with the younger kids. I'm like, they'll learn, but we're going to do it a fun way. We're going to do it in a way that engages them. A couple of the younger ones have had trouble understanding tone. So like when I plug into my amp here and when I plug in at home, it sounds different. So we'll do a tone lesson where I'm like, here's how EQ works. And I like break it down really small and we just do examples. So I have one bass student. So I have a bass sitting in my office, right? And I like pull out the bass and I'm like, okay, let's talk about the tone of this versus your guitar. And they're like, look at how thick those strings are. And I'm like, I know. Yeah. Right. And then I'll just play them the riff for like Another One Bites the Dust. And that gets all of the kids. They're like, I know that. I'm like, I know you know that. Thank God you do. But that's like the way we do it is I'm like, let's just make crazy noises for 30 minutes and see what you learn. You know, I just had one girl who was really, really upset about her tone at home. And so I talked to her dad and I was like, look, she comes in for 30 minutes. It's going to sound like chaos in my room. So don't be, you know, when you're sitting outside my studio, don't go like, what are they doing in there? It's just going to sound like mayhem. But I'm going to have her turn up every dial. I'm going to have her do every setting. I'm just going to like have her make noise. I'm going to have her do weird stuff on the strings. Just like kind of break out of that bubble of lessons of like, here's what we're learning today, here's theory, here's this chord and then this chord. I'm like, we're just gonna make weird noises, you know. And she's 8, so she loves that. And she's like, I'll have them sing too. I'll be like, okay, no you do this, no you do this, you know, like that kind of stuff. And they love it. And I'm like, that's what matters for the young kids too, is like they're learning, they're gonna play. We do student showcases at Third Rock. So that's something that I brought to them because it's something Darsh and I had started doing where he plays and I sing. And it puts them on the spot. I'm a very intense teacher, obviously. Yeah, so like they practice really hard. They're really scared of me, right? But no, for real, putting them in front of an audience gives them something to be like, oh, I really better practice. You know, that kind of stuff. They have an audience. So yeah, I'll sing and I'll have them play. Darsh, who I've had for the longest now, is doing more lead stuff, so I'll play rhythm and have him take a solo, and I'm like, sweet, you know, like that kind of stuff. He's learning the Hotel California solo right now, so we've been jamming.
That's so rad though. To they introduce you to freedoms that you may have forgotten in the music, and you introduce them to freedoms in a medium that's there for you on the best and the worst of days.
Yeah, big time. They pick the songs. That's something I took guitar lessons for maybe 1.5 years, 2 years, and that's like something that was important to me. My teacher, Craig Wilson, I gave him Taylor Swift songs to learn. I gave him like whatever weird stuff, and now I'm getting full payback for like whatever. Like they'll bring me like I know a lot of Imagine Dragons. I've learned Nyan Cat. I've learned Trogdor, which I learned is a dinosaur on YouTube, dinosaur dragon thing. Right now we're doing Weird Al's Eat It. It's like, whatever. So rad. I'll do it. Like, whatever's going to get them to play, you know? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, when your students start to knock on the door of songwriting, how much does that change the conversation for you?
I do kind of a structured approach to songwriting. Like, for example, my one student, Brooke, she sang at the Muse, and she's done a couple other things. She's really interested in songwriting. And I've had a couple students come in just for songwriting. And so I start them with something called scaffolding, which is a technique I learned from Bruce Dalzell in Athens. I think it's pretty common, but basically taking a song that you know and love, replacing all the words. So you keep the structure, you keep the melody, you keep the chords, you keep the strumming, everything the same except for the words. You keep the rhyme pattern, but you replace it. So that's actually how I have my song Songbird, because Natalie Hemby of the Hive Women, she has a song called Cairo, Illinois, and I took that because I loved the chord progression, and I was like, I kind of want this for my own. Yeah. So I changed the words, and then I went back and I, of course, changed different parts of the melody, different parts of the like actual arrangement, so it's my song, but that's where it came from. So that's what I do. What are we working on right now? Brooke is working on, there's a song called, is it Wilder Days? Yeah, it's Wilder Days by Morgan Wade. I wish I knew you in your wilder days is how that goes. Brooke and I both know it. And so we sit down and we literally have just started to replace the words. And I'll walk her through an exercise where it's called 333. Also learned it from Bruce Dalzell. You spend 3 minutes and you brainstorm titles. Then you pick your best title of the bunch. You spend another 3 minutes. You come up with any word that could possibly fit in a song with that title. And then for the last 3 minutes, you come up with rhymes for those words. So then you have a whole sheet in front of you that's like potential ideas, right? So Brooke and I did that. Her song is called Happy Place. It'll be debuting on the Muse, I'm sure, someday soon, right?
Please.
And then we work through that, and I kind of talk her through, like, I just kind of try and get in her head because it's a new experience, songwriting. There's no right or wrong answer. So I say, okay, what's the song about? What do you kind of want to tell people about it? You know, that kind of stuff. And it's cool. Happy Place is like where she's going when she has anxiety or stress. And I'm like, what a common like experience. Of course, like anyone can relate to that. It's like, here's this imaginary, even like a meditation kind of thing. She's like, here's what I think of when I'm feeling overwhelmed. I'm like, what a beautiful starting point for your first song too. So yeah, I'm walking her through that. We have a little bit of a chorus done and then like an intro. And I'll talk her through like, here's where we're going to put the rhymes to stay with your scaffolding project. And then maybe here's a main idea of the first verse. And we'll just talk. So that's what we do for 30 minutes. And whether we get a line or we get a whole verse, depends. It's just like a songwriting session. I want to not give her answers. So even if I have an idea, it's her song. And it's our first experience songwriting. So I'm just going to ask her questions until something comes out that she's like, oh, that's kind of cool. I'm like, let's put it in there. So it's really guided songwriting is basically what I'd say.
Yeah, well, I love hearing some of the methods that you've pulled into this aspect of it because songwriting is very abstract. You know, it's hard to say, here's a blank sheet, do something with it. Like the open page is a syndrome. It's scary in that.
Time. That's what I actually told Darsh's parents as well. He was starting to songwrite. What song did we use? Oh my God. It was something, it was like an Eminem something. Like it was something like we had so much lines to fill, but he was like, I really want to do this song. And I was like, okay. So that's what I told him is like, when you look at a blank page, it's like, where do you even start? But if you have some kind of structure, I think that's the best way to get into songwriting because then you're not just like, you're opening up that creative valve without like having to start from like nowhere.
Yeah, the most intimidating part of it for sure.
Yeah, so I think that's a great thing. And then once you see you can write songs, maybe lines will start coming to you. I don't know about you, but I have a notepad in my phone that's like you just scroll and scroll and scroll forever, and it's just one-liners. All the stuff that comes to me when I'm driving.
You shouldn't be typing.
I shouldn't be typing. The voice memos, I like have my voice memos app is like the first thing on my phone when you just open it, and it's all like just random. They name themselves after locations. I don't know how to turn that off. So all of my ones are like Montgomery Road. I'm like, no, don't tell them I was there. Like, on the phone.
You're being stalked, but
yeah, I'm like, oh my God, I'm driving. If you ever see me driving like 15 miles per hour, it's because I got like an idea. I'm like in the right lane. I'm like, and I'm no stranger.
You are a hazard in traffic because you're just feeling it.
I know. I'm like, okay, I got Black Hollow. I'm like wrecking. No, don't text me that.
But, you know, there's those kind of things.
I do try and wait for a red light. I feel like I got to chime in and say that. I'll wait for the red light. I'll just keep saying it.
For young songwriters, though, to have someone like yourself that's not only actively doing it, but very honest about the whys and the wheres and things like that, it makes the process less intimidating. I could tell at the Muse that these students of yours that came to the show have a deep emotional connection to what you two share in those lessons.
Yeah,
and in that admiring, you want to feel like your heroes are human. Like I try to think that way about Prince and Paul.
Yeah,
you know, and these are people that are monolithic in terms of their impact on the world, but they're people. You know, they're human beings. That I just finished reading Paul's biography.
Yeah,
and you get to the point where he loses Linda. You know, you talk about the hardest experience someone has on this planet of losing their partner or losing a parent, and how in the same way that on bad days I fall onto the page and I say, this does not deserve to be on my shoulders. It deserves to be in my catalog. And I'm going to come back to this when I'm ready. Yeah. To know that that's where your heroes went makes you feel so much more understood. And the plight of a songwriter is a difficult one.
Yeah, you're putting a lot out there. I think I've been lucky so far to be able to express things and have them really well received. I've only had one negative critique ever, and I was like, whatevs. And those things too, you know, I take criticism well. I only had one person who was like clearly trying to like ruffle my feathers a little bit, and I was like, I don't care. But yeah, with the songwriting, with the students, even if they're not writing, if they're just picking songs that mean a lot to them, it's always very clearly like a safe environment. I say, especially to like some of the teenagers who are clearly going through what we all go through in adolescence, like really struggling with themselves. I'm like, look, unless you're in danger, I've had to say this to a couple of kids, unless you are in danger, I don't need to like share this with your parent or like staff or whatever, but like if you're struggling with something that you feel that you need to express, this is a place to do it, you know, all that kind of stuff. Even just like, I am young enough now that like I feel like a friend to a lot of them too. I do like ask them questions about Gen Z and stuff because I'm right on the cusp.
You're like, why do you guys email like that?
Yeah, I'm like,
what's
what's going on? Like,
what's your Snapchat?
I'll be like, is this popular on the TikTok?
You've been TikToking again, youngsters.
Are you TikToking this song? Are you TikTok
you
famous
fucking
yet?
whippersnappers.
But like, I had one of my 8-year-olds was like, you really need to watch more YouTube so you can keep up with what I'm talking about. I was like, oh my God.
You want to talk about negative feedback?
Like,
that shit hurts.
Sorry. He's like, you don't know what I'm talking about? And then I get like D&D updates for all of them too. I don't play D&D every
Why
week.
is D&D making a comeback? I felt like that was a generation before us.
Stranger Things did it or something.
God, but you're probably very on point with that. Like,
Yeah.
we're
I'm just
Yu-Gi-Oh!
like,
and
oh,
Pokemon
cool.
generation. Like, were you Yu-Gi-Oh! Kid?
No.
You want me to bust up my cards right now? You want to catch these hands,
No.
dog?
Never have I ever been into any of that stuff, which is fine because I'll just be like, he'll be like, yeah, and the campaign was really tough. I'm like, oh my God, do you want to take it out on this guitar right now? He's like, yeah. I'm like,
Hits that E minor. He's
yeah,
like, that's it right there.
intense. Yeah, I'm like, get it out, man.
Let's capo that on 4. You ever heard of G sharp minor?
Exactly.
That's
Let's get it. We'll use it. I'll be like, I want you to show me the best solo you've ever played. You can show it to that dragon. Like, I don't know.
That's
Making it up.
That's rad though. I mean, like, there's something so visceral about strings underneath hand or a drum kit in your life that you're taking these kids from having a hobby
Right.
to an outlet, and that's not what these parents signed up to pay for because they
Right.
didn't know that that's the conversion that needs to happen.
Yeah, and they have it for life. That's like, it's actually part of my like bio that's on Third Rock is I'm like, whatever way they want to take it. If they want to be in the school talent show, if they want to go to YouTube, if they want to be a TikTok star, like whatever it is, I'll get them there. But at the same time, like I'm going to make sure that this is something they can keep up with for life too. I have some adult students too who are almost like coming at it from a different angle. If I always wanted to do this, I never thought I could. Now I have the time, like I'm in retirement or something like that. Can you help me through it without making me feel like it's too late to do it? And like all that kind of stuff too. So same thing. I'm like, we're going to do it. One of my students, Kevin, just bought his first electric guitar.
That's rad.
And it was awesome. Like he's been playing on this really sweet resonator for a while, but he came in the other week and he was like, are you ready? And I was like, for what? And he like brings out beautiful red electric. And I was like, oh my God, Kevin, like this is so cool. And he's like, yeah, like I wasn't going to do it. Like he's actually going through chemo right now. So he's like, I didn't think I wanted to spend the money on this. Like, I don't know if I have the time to play it. And I was like, well, you've been practicing. You show up every week. We've been learning solos. Get into it, Kevin. Come on.
Yeah.
I love him so much if he sees this. But yeah, and he's learning. We're doing More Than This by Roxy Music, and he's got like a little lead part in it. We did Heroes by David Bowie, like all the good stuff. Like, sweet. I love all the students. Clearly, I could talk about them for forever, and which is crazy because I never wanted to go into education. Like my mom is a school principal, so she was always like, "You should be a music teacher," and I was like, "Never." And here we are.
Yeah, here you are, 25 students deep in the truth, you know? Like,
for real.
but, you know, there's something about this monumental thing that we all went through in the pandemic where what resurfaced is a new version of ourselves.
Yeah, big time.
And if you took that time to grow, you'll never look back as the hardship. You know, you're only going to look back as a transformation.
Exactly.
That's a beautiful thing. Embracing that discomfort.
Right. And now, too, having 25 students and having them all have different tastes, it's making me a better guitar player for sure. Because every week I'm working on 25 different songs in addition to my own stuff, right? Would I have ever sat down and really gotten to know Nothing Else Matters? I don't know. But now I'm like, man, that intro is beautiful. Like, holy shit. Like, you know, hopefully I can say shit on this podcast.
You can say anything. Absolutely
and
anything.
You'll take it out if you want to.
No, I can't. I actually don't know how to edit these things. If you want to come in third party, you can. Instagram actually beeps everything out on me once I add captions, which is awesome.
Do you know you can edit the captions so they don't do that?
I didn't know I could edit out the beats, but I knew I could edit the captions.
Yeah, so if you edit the captions, pro tip, because my other job is social media, if you say like, oh, ship, then it won't bleep it because it thinks you're saying ship. Or like, I follow one person who says, "What's up, bitches?" But she says "fishes" in the caption, so it doesn't bleed.
Yeah, and you don't want to lose that.
Yeah, it's the sass.
So are you making the Insta content from these podcasts?
No. So I have one job where I do social media management for a brand, a person named Natalie Frank. If you've heard of HoneyBook, that CRM, she is one of the founders of HoneyBook. So
Interesting.
I worked for her a little bit. That was my pandemic job. As I said, my major was communications, which means I can do whatever. But
means I have magic in my fingers
yeah,
and type this
which
keyboard.
means I'm just really good at communicating. Clearly.
So what is HoneyBook?
Yeah, it's a CRM platform. So basically for small business owners who need to send invoices or have online booking, that kind of stuff. It helps with that kind of thing. Natalie herself, her brand is Small Business Mama Bear. So kind of like if you're looking for small business advice, if you're looking for like, what's the inflation this year? Or like, what can I do to help market my business? What can I help with social media tactics? That's her whole thing. So I help with that kind of social media engagement, making sure like if someone's tagging her and she really needs to see it, I'll make sure that she sees it, that kind of stuff. She released a book called Built to Belong that was on the top of the Amazon charts.
That's sick.
Yeah, right. Losing your voice a little bit. But yeah, just making sure like when that came out and a bunch of people were tagging her like, oh, I'm reading your book, like making sure she saw all of those so that she can stay engaged with her community is my literal job, which is cool. She just has a big enough platform that she's like, I don't see everything that I want to see. Can you like highlight it for me? So I do a little bit. I do like 4 hours a week for her. So it's not a big job. It used to be 7 as we were promoting the book. And then now it's just like a study. I do it a couple times a week. And then I do the podcasting. And what I love about the way that things have kind of fallen together is I'm inspired in different ways in each of my job. Natalie being big on small business and community, her tagline is community over competition, which I'm sure you've heard. It's like very common now, I think. But that's her tagline. And then for Gaffin Creative, which is my podcasting, that stuff I edit small business owners podcasts. So I'm learning marketing, I'm learning social media strategy, I'm learning business strategy. I hired a CPD this year who was a guest on one of the podcasts, and she's specifically for she works with small business female entrepreneurs to like solve their bookkeeping and stuff. And I was like, man, I've been looking for somebody like this. And I was editing her podcast, stopping my clock to like stop and take notes on what she was sharing as the guest. And I was like, I just got to reach out to her. So Jackie Easterday is my CPD now because I reached out to her through that. So it's like in every aspect, kind of like we were saying with music, just soak in from other people. There's so much we can learn even outside of music, just in like, I edit a lot of wedding photographers podcasts and I'm like, dang, like they're so good at community. They're so good at marketing themselves. Like I can take from this too.
Absolutely. I think to enjoy the inspiration of watching beginners, you can step into a beginner's mindset when you look at these things. What's a CPD?
Yeah. Like your accountant.
Gotcha.
I don't know the exact thing. Off the
Do
top of
you
my head.
use HoneyBook for?
I don't currently. Maybe in the future. Right now, all my invoicing is through Third Rock. So like parents are paying Third Rock and then they're sending me a report and I'm sending them an invoice back. So right now I don't need it. If I was like my own studio and like had 25 different clients for guitar, then I would invoice them through probably HoneyBook. It's one of those things where it's like you don't have to do the work of knowing when people are due. It just automatically is kind of sending them, hey, you're due. You can pay it right here at this link. I think it does email marketing as well. So if you're someone who has like a weekly, monthly newsletter, you can just plan all that in advance. If you're someone who has like a sign up, like you signed up for my newsletter, now let me send you a welcome sequence. Like, hey, I'm Matt. Like, good to meet you. You should check out my video. Here's my merch. Here's my upcoming shows. Like maybe you send them through a sequence. You don't have to go in and program all that. You've programmed it once, and then HoneyBook will just send it on time when they signed up, like once a week or something like that.
So it's like refined consumer experience kind of stuff.
It's like all that like nitty gritty robotic timely stuff that you don't actually have to do more than once. You do it once, you tell HoneyBook when to send it, and it'll do it. So you don't have to be, every time you get a new email sign up, you don't have to go in and program the welcome sequence or something like that. Yeah.
Well, it's really it's overwhelming to think at scale. How do you keep up with what if things go really right? We all need to be prepared for
exactly
the pace that I know today and the pace that could happen tomorrow if lightning in a bottle hits.
I love that so much. That's actually why I hired the CPD, because like financially the business stuff has been going well lately, and I'm like, I want to be ready to grow. I feel good musically. I want to be ready to take on 25 students. I'm a sole LLC. I'm like, I need to be ready to like know how to handle taxes, and I need to know how to put aside some money for business savings. And then I want to pay a band, like how do I have a fund for them? So like, that's kind of why I started working with Jackie this year, was like, I am just me, myself, and I right now, but I'd like to be more than that. So let me get the system settled first. And then when I am ready to hire somebody, maybe, I don't know, maybe someday I would love to hire my sister. She's a graphic designer, right?
Yeah.
She just got an awesome job.
A
So
kick-ass
down
graphic
the
designer
future.
as well.
Yeah.
I've seen her materials. She rocks.
She's ridiculous. And how lucky I've been to like have her literally as my sister, and like our creative passions kind of go together. But yeah, just like being like, maybe one day I want to hire her for a month and take her on tour. This is down the line, or maybe it's this year. I don't know. Don't hold yourself back. Maybe at some point I want to hire her just to be like on my team for a month, and like I'll already have the system set up to do that. That kind of stuff is what I'm thinking about.
Yeah.
Same thing too. Like maybe I do hire someone to do social media strategy, or like, I don't even know, just like my dream I think eventually would be to have a hired band of like, this is how I'm going to pay you each month. Like you can expect this much from every gig. Like I would love to have something steady, and more like structured. That's what I would love to do. So I'm kind of putting the building blocks in place right now.
Yeah. Well, what was the main need for you, and like the purpose of being a small business owner, getting an LLC and doing that?
Sure. So I knew that I was going to be entirely freelance. And I did change my last name at one point.
Legally?
About to be legal.
Oh,
yes.
Nice.
Fancy. Yeah. You heard it here first.
I don't even remember your actual last name.
Exactly. That's the point.
Yeah. But that's why, like, there was a point in time where I was trying to call you at the
I think we
music.
both changed it at some point.
Well, like, yes. At some point we were both like, no, this isn't going to work out like that no more.
No.
But I was looking for your phone number,
You're
and I was
"Who
like,
is this?"
no, I was like, oh, I just don't have it. I got to hit
Yeah.
her up for it.
Mhm.
And then I called you, and then this other last name popped up, and I was
"Who
like,
is that?"
fucking spam. Like, whatever. Like,
Exactly. But yeah, so knowing that I was going to be entirely a freelance contractor and separating out my personal finance from business finance, because right now the way I get paid, Third Rock pays me, but I'm a freelance contractor. Natalie pays me, but I'm a freelance contractor. Gaff and Creative pays me, but I'm a freelance contractor. So everything's coming in, no taxes are taken out. And if it was all going into my personal account, let's say I messed up something, I really messed up my taxes or something like that. Like if somebody needs to come for the business, like if, I don't know if the IRS is the best example, but like, let's just say something happened where like somebody's trying to come for my money and I've separated it from my personal account, then my personal account is not at risk.
Mhm.
They can potentially have some kind of access to my business account, but they can't have access to my personal. So at least now my personal assets are fine.
Mhm.
I did this really young before I really understood it, but I've been kind of educating myself since then. That's actually why I've been working with Jackie this year, is just to make sure all the systems are good. How much do I need to take apart for taxes every month? How much, like, should I be paying quarterly taxes? That kind of stuff.
Mhm.
That's kind of where I'm at. And then I want to do an album this year, and I want to have the savings already built up. So that's kind of why it's all in different funds now. I am also very into math and Excel charts. So I feel like maybe this is my personal strength, is I like doing this kind of thing. I think that's not typical in the like struggling musician image that at least I saw growing up. Like, when I said I was going into music, people were like, well, you're never going to make money doing that. I'm like, try me again.
Yeah.
Try me again. But, just to kind of get in front of that, I really like the numbers aspect of it. So maybe that's a strength even down the line, but I love organization and like numbers. So it's kind of nerdy in that aspect. But
Well, I think folks that feel their creative juices flowing and those kind of things are huge resources to a small scene like ours. Because, from everything from my baseline contracts that I send to venues versus how I do my taxes versus how I pay my band, I'm not reinventing the wheel. I'm reaching out to folks that I feel were knowledgeable, and I'm taking from information that. So
that's why I think getting into small business ownership, like learning from the podcast, was the best way for me to like really get a knowledge, like hearing from other people who didn't really have a clear image when they first started their business, to like, now I'm actually making a profit and I'm able to pay employees and like all this kind of stuff. The growth of that, I like seeing that. I like learning from it.
Yeah. Is there any advice that you would share with folks that haven't made that first small business step of how to do that as easily as possible?
Sure. So I'm pretty sure you only have to start reporting at $600. So let's say you're a brand new musician, you're not making more than $600 a year. I don't think you have to report that. But once you start like hiring yourself out as a freelance contractor and you're making more than $600 a year, then it is taxable income. So at that point, I think that there's a couple of different resources. I would actually really recommend Jackie Easterday. She's on Instagram. She has a bunch of resources of that exact question. When are you an LLC? When are you an S Corp? Like all of this kind of stuff, and exactly when to make that switch. I think it depends on the business and exactly what you're in. But yeah, if you're making more than $600 a year, which like if you're regularly gigging, you probably are, that's when I would start looking at it. And, are you in a hobby? Are you taking it a bit more seriously? You don't have to feel like a full professional yet. I don't know what that means to be like, oh, now I'm a professional. Like, it's kind of, I think, by person.
Yeah.
Each person, yeah.
But I think just the advice of, if you spell out that acronym, this is a limited liability corporation. If things go poorly, if someone trips on a mic cable at your gig and sues you, the business can fold and you are still able to open a new business and to proceed.
Yep.
And those
your personal money isn't in the equation in that case, yeah.
And how you pay out from your business is very important things to understand, and what's the wisest way to use your money. Like for someone like myself, where you and I are in the same boat, and I'm going into my 12th year of professional gigging, and when I started, I probably didn't make more than $2,000 that first year. But at this point, like my business is in that six-figure range.
Yeah.
I don't make that personally. Most of that's expense stuff.
Yeah.
Exactly. But having a wise expense sheet, as far as like if you're going to purchase new cables, you write that off.
Yeah. That's actually huge. So Jackie and I work in a system called QuickBooks, and she went in when I hired her to do my initial like setup. I think she has a package that's like a QuickBooks setup, and it was an investment, but I was like, I know this is going to work for the long haul, right? She went in, she looked at all my finances for the year, and she made buckets for postage, for bandmates, for I gotta buy supply strings, that kind of stuff, for gas to the gig. She made the buckets. So now I go in and I do my bookkeeping at the top of every month, and there's buckets right there, and it's all just laid out easy. I'm not getting to tax season being like, oh my God, where is that receipt for the pics?
But for so many players, it is this huge moment of dread.
Absolutely.
But you don't.
It has been for me.
Yeah. But when you look at large companies, there's a level of creativity in the accounting world that if you're not getting a professional, you're missing out on larger savings, better opportunities, and more efficient processing. And also, there's a lot of accountability that comes with having someone that says, hey, this is what I need from you. So I got to check these boxes, or else tax season rolls up and you're like, there's 50 things that I forgot that I have to do this year.
Right.
And one of those could be your illegally earned income. I'm not saying you're selling drugs, but if you are, the IRS wants to know for some reason. Still the funniest thing ever. Don't be Al Capone, everybody. You want to get by with this.
Get by with it. That's so funny. I think the other advice too, something that at least helped me, was talking to someone who knew small business. Jackie's just so good at, I was like, well, like I gotta get strings and I gotta get, I gotta go to the gig, and like, what if I get food when I'm on tour? Like those kind of questions. Like, is that a write-off? Like, I love Schitt's Creek. Like, is it a write-off? It's just a write-off.
Those scenes are so funny because my fiance Emily and I were talking about that.
I love Schitt's Creek.
And she works in the healthcare world. Her check comes out with the tax taken out. Yeah. You get health benefits.
So different, right?
Versus I'm over here, applying for Medicaid. Doing these kind of things that down in the nitty gritty, it's very intimidating.
Yeah. You got to figure it out, and it's not something we're taught.
Yes, absolutely. And something like, what's it like when I go on tour, where unlike many other businesses, we make non-economical decisions based on our higher aspirations of the business.
Sure.
I'm fine with losing money. I've decided for myself 1 weekend a month. Yeah. This is when I do my touring that's all about listener acquisition, making fans, making relationships. I also heard on a podcast.
It's about what's your priorities.
Yeah. I heard on a podcast once that if you're going to pay for anything on the road, pay for accommodations. Get a good night's sleep. Yeah. Don't show up to your gig without a meal in your stomach. Right. Because these things suffer in the ROI that's not financial, and the ROI that's experiential, and that long-term growth that you couldn't put a dollar sign on. The person that came to your show and loved it so much that maybe next time you're in town, they'll sell your merch for you.
For real. That's such good advice. I love that. I think, biggest thing is looking at your priorities. And I think It's another like law of attraction thing. Of like just getting ahead, like where do you want to be? What's your setup gonna be? Like I said, I want to pay my sister every dollar I have. Like that is what I would love to do, right? So making it so that I know what dollars I have and I can throw them at her, that's exactly what I want to do.
Well, and within that, when you have a band, you 1099 your band at the end of the year. This is how much I paid you. When I know that the guys in the band are bringing this in as personal income, I want to give them the same advice of, you're going to get farther with this money if you have a business that separates it so that you can have all the same benefits that I have.
Yeah,
and continuing to teach these things to each other, because I don't know everything I need to do. I'm 10 years into a small business. I still have very little of an idea of what the fuck's going on.
I get what you're saying. Yeah, we're out here winging it, but like in a fun way.
Exactly. And in something like QuickBooks, like I use QuickBooks self-employed as well.
Yep.
It's been a huge game changer in my life.
Big time.
Along with an app called Every Dollar from David Ramsey.
Yeah.
So I have 2 books of accounting. One of them is totally automatic, where I just toss things into buckets. These, you can't write off meals where you got booze, but if you can actually ask for a different check with your booze on it and your meal on it, and you write off one of those and
That's
not
so
the
funny.
other.
I didn't know that one. That's so good.
That's something I learned very quickly, because what if I want to treat the band to a meal on the road? Because these people deserve it in my life.
And they're your employees, technically.
And also, it's beneficial on my book to have a long list of expenses for the things that were beneficial to me. And part of that is the experience of, okay, we had a great 3 days of shows. This is our off day.
Yeah.
I want to treat y'all like you're the most important people in my life, because you are. Because if I was out here by myself, I'd be having a lot less fun.
Yeah, for real. And isn't that beautiful? Like when you do get past the hump of this is kind of scary, then you can see the way you kind of know what's coming in, so you can spend it in a way that makes you feel good, that treats your people really good, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's really cool. Yeah.
And I was going to say this before. You take so much pride when you 1099 someone at the end of the year and you say, like, look, I put a chunk of change in their pocket doing exactly what I want to do on this planet.
Yeah.
And
it's beautiful.
Community over competition, like these are my people. These folks are more than the expense sheet. These are the families that I love to see at the shows. I love when the children of my bandmates come out and I get to give them a high five and they dance their asses off. And we get to have this big family that I call the Recipe, and that means a lot to me.
Absolutely, yeah. And you know that you are kind of leading the way and being able to support them because of the hard work that you've done. I think that's a beautiful thing.
And then when you see other players in your scene, like Noah Smith is a great example of someone that's like, I'm going to turn you on to the obvious to me and the unknown to you, so that now we can all have conversations about what's the next obvious unknown for all of us.
Yeah, big time.
And within that, this scene starts to take steps so that people in this city shouldn't have to go to Nashville to feel like they have the standard of quality and the sound they want.
I'm actually going to talk about Natalie again because this reminds me. So she has Honeybook, which is that CRM, but she also has something called the Rising Tide Society, which is across the U.S., maybe even international. I'm not sure. But Rising Tide Society is basically like a bunch of small business owners who get together locally. There's local chapters. They support each other, just like we're doing here. And maybe a photographer comes in the mix, a graphic designer comes in the mix. We all talk business, that kind of stuff. But their motto, I think it's a Teddy Roosevelt quote. It's a rising tide lifts all ships, something like that, raises all ships, that kind of thing. Of like, if you and I are sharing about money and you say to me like, hey, you're totally underselling yourself at this gig. Like, I make this much at this gig and you're asking $100 less. That's only hurting you in the long run. It's hurting the next artist. If I come up and I ask for way less, if I'm like, oh, I'll play that for free. You're like, that was my weekly pay thing. And now they're trying to get me to do it for free. Knowledge shared among the business, whether it's money or like graphic designers or like, hey, I recorded at this studio. This guy's great. That kind of knowledge just makes your whole scene better. Yeah. Well,
especially when Chandler Carter woke me up to this year that I was underselling myself. This is one of my childhood best friends.
Yeah.
And it's because of a little bit of a competitive nature that I have with Chandler, where it's like, I think I'm as good as Chan. We're homies. We work on the same things. And we work together on this. So I'm going to start charging those prices. And then I can look at my whole book, and you don't realize what people will value you at, because this is, what I would put in the bucket of non-essential, entertainment, and it's crazy that the pandemic woke us up to the fact that we're not essential workers, but a lot of people see us as a non-negotiable.
Right.
So those folks, you can lean on your supporters for the emotional, financial, and physical support that you need to get things done. But if you're underselling what your needs are, then odds are this thing is going to wither away in the next 5 years, and you don't get to go to that next scale of things.
Exactly. You have to, another thing with just money or business or getting clear on your goals, like knowing where you're headed and knowing what you need to sustain is just life-changing. I think that's really what I've spent this last year on. And like you said, since COVID, just getting really clear on what do I actually want from this? Like what feels meaningful, what feels purposeful, what can I keep up instead of, reaching burnout, losing my voice, like seeing people. I want to see my friends and all that. Like, where's the happy place? And trying to get closer and closer to that.
Yeah. How do you quantify your goals at the top of a year?
Yeah. So, that's a great question because I've been doing it so differently lately. What I have been doing, so I told you I journal every single day and I kind of have a check-in on where I'd like to be. And I think since COVID, I've gotten a lot clearer on like where I would like to be professionally, like what that image looks like. To me, original music is my most important thing. It gives me so much meaning. I love sharing the songs. I love writing. So it's like, how do I put that first? The other thing I'm really working on this year is how do I put my health first? How do I, I'm good at in the off season, going running, going to the gym, doing yoga, all that stuff. How do I keep that up in the busy season? That kind of stuff. So I'm kind of looking at things quarterly, but like by seasons. So right now we're in the winter season, and my whole winter season has been how do I lay a foundation? That's just where I'm at right now. I feel like I want to level up. So how do I set the foundation in order to do that? Stuff like working with my CPD. We doing okay?
Doing fine.
Working with my CPD, getting up consistently, making sure I have a regular practice schedule. Again, just like with the financial sheets, I'm very like organized, that kind of stuff. I love consistency and discipline and all that kind of stuff. And so in my off season, which is winter, I can really sit down and do that. I will sit down and journal. Best case scenario, what does my career look like at the end of this year? What does teaching look like at the end of this year? Where are the podcasts at the end of this year? What do I do for fun this year? Where are my relationships at the end of this year? What's my home environment like at the end of this year? Kind of that. It's a long process. I take my time through the winter to like really kind of mull that over. What inspires me? A question I've had on my mind a lot lately. I love Jade Bird. So I'm like, okay, what do I love about Jade Bird? What does my life look like if I'm like doing the things that Jade Bird does that I love? Like even just like kind of trying to bring that up for me. Like where's the band at the end of this year? Have I released new music at the end of this year? And then I'm like, okay, if that's the best case scenario, how do I get there? And then break it up by quarters. And so that's why this quarter is all about foundation, because if I'm in a healthy routine, if you don't have too much mental leakage from like, oh, I really got to get to the gym, or like, oh, I really got to like figure out these finances, like, that kind of stuff. I really got to pay those taxes, right? Like if I have the foundation set, then I have more mental capacity for creative stuff.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm doing these couple months, laying everything out, figuring out, who have I talked to like that wants to play a gig together, making a list, seeing like when would be a smart time. I have some friends in Nashville, I have some friends in Cleveland and Chicago, and all of them want to get together. I'm like, how beautiful is that? How do I make that happen? How do I get to all of them this year? How do I bring them here? Just kind of going big picture and working backwards. That's what I'm doing right now. Yeah. I feel like that might not be the process for everybody, but it's the way it works for me. Literally, I don't know if you saw, I laid out my calendar yesterday. I'm a big paper planning person. So I saw the whole year out and I was like, okay, what does this quarter look like? Where do I want to be by, March 21st, spring equinox, right? So like, where do I want to be there? That's what I do.
I like that you bring up the spring equinox. Like, okay, so now we just found out you're mainly focusing on the cosmos and where you sit.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, that's heavy,
I think that my personal preference is just like following the seasons and that kind of stuff. I think it makes a lot of sense. Like in the winter season when we're cold, it's great to do a yoga term like root to rise, right? So I'm getting the roots down so that in the spring, I'm ready to go. I've got new material. I've been practicing. I know what I want to do. I've got some shows lined up maybe. And that for me, like a 3-month kind of block feels like a good steady pace. That way I'm taking my time on things that are important, but I'm not like putting stuff off either. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, and one thing I really like that you touched on at many points in this podcast is we all take from our heroes. We take from the people we admire. And there's a level that, sometimes it comes with a guilty conscience, and it should not. Because if we're going to grow, you should pull from the successful. You should reach into things that you feel like maybe are above your pay grade right now, But what made that album successful? What makes this person successful? What does their strategy look like? And how can I redefine that for me?
Yeah.
And not being too precious about, I took a rhyme scheme here, but I'm going to do just enough to make it my rhyme scheme, because none of us have had an original thought. You know, we're an organism that's connected to the greater consciousness. That's where the muse comes in. We share that muse. You know, we share these feelings.
And it's those things too. I think sometimes we jump ahead to the final thing. It's like, I don't know, when people set goals and they're like, I want to run a marathon. It's like, great, did you run a mile though? You know, those kind of things. I think that there's another quote that I like that's like, don't focus on the staircase, focus on the step in front of you, because the next step will appear, you know? So I don't know how I get to the album release this year, but I know I have to sit down and write a song if I'm going to get to that album release this year. So that's kind of what I do. I just focus on what's the next thing and get clear on that.
Yeah. When it comes to bringing this electric guitar more into your life, what are you doing for that? You just cranking and playing?
I'm working on the song Black Velvet. Do you know that one? Black Velvet and that little boy smile.
No.
It's an older tune, but I love it. It's got really like just fun little guitar riffs. It's really bluesy. It's like dum 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 dum, right? That's my best vocal impression of it. People are going to be like, why is she making all these noises? You can tell I teach children these days. I was never like this until I started teaching kids. Now I'm like, let's write a little note, and here's how it goes. My teacher voice, I guess. My mom's so happy. But yeah, so I'm working on just practicing more lead stuff. I love Jack White's Lazaretto. I love that song. So really what I've been doing lately, just to, like I said, you gotta take baby steps. If I'm gonna play the electric guitar more on stage, I better start practicing it more at home and just make that a more regular thing on my life. I would love to see, we'll put this into permanent recording now, and just we can check back in at the end of the year, but like I would love to get to a point where I'm a strong lead guitarist. I think that was never my like intention growing up. I really was singer-songwriter and like, I'm gonna play at the ice cream shop and I'm gonna sing all my cover songs, and then I went into like singer-songwriter folky mode, and now I'm like, I just really want to play guitar. So to like have a stronger foundation as a lead guitarist by the end of the year is something I'd love. So now I'm just playing electric all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, this has been really great just to get to catch up with you for a little bit, Megan. I really appreciate your honesty and all of it, the way that you have brought so many things into your being and your playing, and it's such a joy to get to share, this city and our time together.
Thank you so much for having me. Thanks for the good questions and like being in that mutual space. I love it. Thank you so much.
Megan motherfucking Wren, everybody! Again, that's Megan Wren. She has a new album out, Sympathetic Vibrations. She will have more music out this year, as we heard, so make sure you follow her on all platforms. Again, in the meantime, make sure that you have liked, subscribed, dropped some comments. Do what you got to do to spread the love, my friends, and thanks for coming. We'll catch you soon. Peace.